In this week's edition of Technique Tuesday, Social Distancing Style, I'm going to be taking a closer look at the ever so popular box jump. So, since the emergence of social media, the box jump has become, for the lack of a better term, bastardized and taken completely out of context in regards to what the actual purpose is. The scary combination of uneducated fitness models with a large social media following has turned the box jump into more of an ego boost than performance boost, and has led our young athletes into believing that attempting these ridiculous 50 to 60 inch box jumps is a good idea. Okay, so let's first talk about why maybe they aren't such a good idea. And without spending too much time getting into certain arguments, such as the fact that typically landing mechanics on a high box jump like that are not really that pretty, or how jumping onto a box that is way too high becomes more of an expression of triple flexion than triple extension, which is what a powerful movement like a box jump should be trying to express, right? Triple extension. Let's ignore all of those arguments for now, and let's talk about safety. As strength and conditioning coaches, it is our job to keep our athletes on the field or court and healthy. So every exercise we select, we need to filter it through the risk versus reward ratio and really consider if the exercise benefits are worth the risks involved. And in my opinion, jumping onto a really high box and considering everything that can go wrong when doing that, it's just not worth the risk. Especially when, if the athlete or coach is informed on what the intent behind the box jump is, and then taught correctly and ultimately performed correctly, you can get even more benefit with very little to no risk. And look, I get it. I will admit that there are some box jump videos that are floating around the interwebs that are pretty impressive, right? But I liken it to Steph Curry and Odell Beckham Jr., and let me explain. Some basketball purists like myself would argue that the way the three-point shot is being utilized now by players like Steph Curry, they would argue that it has ruined basketball. Right? Personally, I won't go that far. I still think it's the best game on the planet, but I do recognize that it has significantly altered the game. And now most kids, even starting as young as 5 years old, because I watch it all the time with my own kids, all they want to do is jack up deep threes like Steph Curry, right? Because that's what they see on TV. And the same is true in football and one-handed catches, when that's all kids want to do now because OBJ did it, right? And it looks really cool. So that is exactly the path the box jump has gone down. And now, as an industry, we need to do a better job of educating so athletes and coaches can make safer and more informed decisions. So let's do exactly that. Let's start with the question we posed earlier of what is the purpose of a box jump? Actually, let's go back one step further and talk about, just in general, what is the purpose of a vertical jump, right? Regardless if you're landing on a box or the ground, right? So when we are jumping with max intent, the goal of the jump, right, is to improve or to enhance the following physical qualities. We want to improve the athlete's vertical force production, right? We want them to ultimately be able to produce more force, and we want them to be able to do it faster, which is rate of force production, right? Next one, we also want to enhance the athlete's general expression of power output. Remember, force times velocity equals power. So we want them to be able to put a lot of force into the ground, right? And that comes from having a stronger lower body. And then we want them to move fast, right? That's the velocity portion of the equation. Doing this, right, and training this quality helps them become a more powerful athlete. And then lastly, the hope is to become more efficient at storing elastic energy through the stretch shortening cycle. And think of this like a rubber band, right, that you're about to shoot across the room, right? You pull back the rubber band, right? That's like you're loading the jump. You're lengthening the muscle. You let go of the rubber band, right? The rubber band shortens, the muscle shortens, right? That's that concentric muscle action of jumping, or the takeoff portion. That is something that we can train and enhance. Okay, so now that we have that established, let's talk about the real reasons why we should be using box jumps and not the reason of trying to get more Instagram followers, right? So there are two main reasons why we use the box jump, and I'm going to talk through those right now. First one being is that the box, using a box is a great motivational tool for athletes, right? It encourages them to jump higher and with more intent. So when they are asked to jump up onto a box versus just jumping from the ground and landing on the ground, they are without a doubt going to put more effort into a box jump than they will be if you just ask them to jump straight up off the ground, right? The next reason is one that I think that a lot of people don't realize is one of the main purposes or reasons for a box jump, and that is taking gravity out of the equation, right? And minimizing the eccentric forces that are associated with landing, right? We all know how taxing and demanding plyometrics can be on our joints and just our body as a whole. So by landing on a box, we are ultimately just trying to soften and lessen the impact. Okay, let's talk about a couple prerequisites that we require from our young athletes before they start jumping. First things first, they need to know how to load correctly for the takeoff, right? We see a lot of young kids, or baby deers as we like to refer to them as, with a real lack of body awareness, who don't quite understand how to get into their correct position in order to load up for a jump, really that's going to allow them to correctly use the muscles in their legs, hips, and core versus just kind of hanging out on tendons and ligaments. We also need our athletes to learn how to absorb force before they apply force. Very similar to all the things we just talked about with loading, the athlete needs to understand body position, how to dissipate the eccentric forces from the landing, right, through muscle, and not dissipating those forces through, again, tendons and ligaments. After the athlete learns to load and land, then they can start jumping. We really try to never allow them to jump onto a box that is higher than their standing vertical jump. Right, and that is information that we gather through their baseline testing during their assessment. So we have that information ready. And the reason for this is that if the box jump is done correctly and the athlete creates true vertical displacement, like you were seeing in these videos here with Eric, where he is trying to get his center of mass as far away from the ground as possible and landing with minimal knee bend, right, then they should never have to jump on a box that is higher than their vertical, where they have to pull up their knees to their chest, right? They should be able to create so much vertical displacement that they land with their hips much higher than their knees and truly creating that vertical force production. And to drive home that emphasis of landing on the box with your hips higher than your knees, we tell our athletes that they need to land in the same position that they took off from, just like this still shot here of Eric. If you're still listening at this point, I sure do appreciate it. And if you enjoyed listening or learned something new, please share it with a friend. Or if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out or shoot them in the comment section below. Thanks so much and be well.